2:03, and you are listening to 91.7 FM WXPR Rhinelander, 100.9 FM Ironwood Hurley, or you could find us online at wxpr.org. There's also a WXPR app. You could ask your smart speaker to play WXPR, and you could find us there. Today we're also live streaming on Facebook to the Midwest Music Hour page, and also on the YouTube channel to the Midwest Music Hour page there. And if you want to say howdy to me and Chuck, feel free.
Awesome.
You can drop a comment in the chat window, and you might even get to see it and say something about it, respond to it, if you will.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, very excited. Chuck Sotero is in the house from the band Lonesome, all the way from Colorado.
Yeah, man.
Let
Nice to
me just
meet you,
make sure
brother.
that we got some good levels here, I think, on your microphone. Get that up there and rocking and rolling. I hear some guitar. Sounds really good.
Thanks, man.
Sometimes the gain on these microphones is like it needs more. Just more. That's all.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to be here in Rhinelander. It's beautiful here.
Yeah, we're very, Colorado has rocks and trees and lakes.
Yeah, I saw
we got
that.
those things.
Yeah, some
Just missing mountains.
prehistoric, what is it called, glacier activity. I saw that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. I was kind of surprised when I saw all the hills and almost mountains when I pulled coming out of Iowa into Wisconsin. We're playing in Tremolo on Saturday, and there's looks like hiking trails and all kinds of stuff over there. They even have some skiing. So
right.
Yeah,
Skiing, where you don't have to push yourself along.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. And we went and checked out that hotel, and I saw that John Hartford had played there before, and a whole bunch of other places. A whole bunch of other bands had played there before, but I'm a huge John Hartford fan, so figured I'd play this John Hartford song for you guys just to kick it off before I play some originals. And this is one of my favorite tunes right here. The year that it came out, it won 5 Grammy Awards, and it's been covered by over 100 people, and of course Glenn Campbell made it the most famous. But yeah. It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind a couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds that have dried upon some ink stain on some line. That keeps you on the back roads by the rivers of my memory. For hours you're just gentle on my mind. It's not planted on the rocks and ivy, clinging to the columns now that bind me. Or something that somebody said because we thought we fit together walking. Just knowing that the world will not be cursing nor forgiven when I walk along some railroad track and find that you're walking on the back roads by the rivers of my memory. For hours you're just gentle on my mind. Though the wheat fields and the clotheslines and the junkyards and the highways come between us, and some other woman's crying to her mother because she turned and I was gone. Well, I still may run in silence, tears of joys may stain my face, and the summer sun might burn me till I'm blind. but not to where I cannot see you walking on the back roads. For hours you're just gentle on my mind. Well, I dipped my cup of soup back from a gurgling, crackling cauldron in some train yard. And my beard a roughed and coal pile and a dirty hat pulled low across my face. Well, I dipped my cup of soup back from a gurgling, crackling cauldron in some train yard. And my beard a roughed and coal pile and a dirty cap pulled low across my face. Through the cupped hand around the tin can, I pretend to hold you to my breast. Find that you're walking on the back roads by the rivers of my memory. For hours you're just gentle on my mind. Gentle on my mind.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thanks, buddy.
And I love Glenn Campbell and John Hartford, and those are some really, really big names in the bluegrass world. And you know, let's talk about cutting your teeth on the bluegrass down in Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about this barn.
Okay, yeah, it's a very special place. In the bluegrass world, everybody knows about it. It's kind of like the Station Inn, like the Station Inn's non-commercial little brother. That, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's the mecca of bluegrass, as far as I'm concerned, in Georgia. But outside of Georgia, bands from all over. I mean, I saw the Steep Canyon Rangers play there their first year in existence in 2001. I've seen Larry Sparks there. Just you name it, J.D. Crowe, I mean, big names, and Larry Stevenson, pretty big names in bluegrass that, you know, I kind of realized there and then that, you know, bluegrass musicians were really accessible, and, you know, no one's too important for anybody in that genre. And, yeah, I mean, I'm an Army brat, so I've moved all over. I was born in Europe, and I lived in New York City as a kid in Queens, and then my father moved down to Georgia when I was 10 years old, and I lived down there for the last 35 years, and I just moved to Colorado during the pandemic, you know. My wife and I were able to put everything in storage, and we're like, you know what, until this thing is over, we're just going to travel around and sleep in National Forest and really do some social distancing. And we were in Colorado and just feeling really free and enjoying the mountains. And we're like, you know what, let's just get a place out here and just go get our stuff. So we left our movie jobs back in Atlanta, and regrettably we left the band back in Atlanta, and I started a new lineup in Colorado. The band's called Lonesome, and I'm influenced by a lot more than just my bluegrass roots. I'm a big, you know, Deadhead. I love Widespread. I love the Beatles. I'm a big jazz fan. So like and I also like pop music a lot. You know, I'm folk music. So, and if it's good, I love it. So that's kind of what inspires me. I'm not your typical bluegrass writer. I don't just write, you know, the 1-4-5 standard with, you know, talking about the old home place, and I try to keep it a little bit more relevant, or at least tell a story that needs to be told, you know. that you might not hear from the barn. And I was always kind of an outsider because I was a New Yorker, and got an Italian last name, so it was like, at the beginning of playing bluegrass down there in Georgia, people were like, "Who is this guy?" But I actually made some really strong connections down there, and some of those people are big influences on me. Frances Mooney from Fontana Sunset, y'all check her out. She's a really great musician down there. She's been doing it for 50 plus years, and we've got some pretty big bluegrass people that come from there, from North Georgia. It's a pretty talent-rich bluegrass area. So I was really able to absorb all that by osmosis, And this barn, basically 50 years ago, this is a pretty interesting story. The Everetts, they lived in Suwanee, Georgia, and their son was killed. He's a police officer, and he was actually murdered by bank robbers. They were like stealing a car or something like that out there in the woods, and they caught the sheriff rolled in, and somehow this guy was able to kill like two sheriff's deputies and one of the Everetts. So that weekend they had like a bluegrass jam at the Everett's home place, and then they started doing it every week. And then like 20 years after that, about 30 years ago, they built a barn there where they have national acts coming in and playing, and then you can pick in the house, and there's several rooms in the house. And yeah, so like, I went there, and I really did cut my teeth on bluegrass at the Everett's barn, and I'll always be grateful to those people.
Right on. So now bluegrass has its roots where, basically, in gospel music. Would you agree with that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's gospel music, the blues, jazz music. Before there was bluegrass, there was like the Louvin brothers and Delmore brothers and Uncle Dave Macon and the Carter family, Woody Guthrie. Those people kind of set the tone for it. And then Bill Monroe came around, and he started he started a band called the Bluegrass Boys, but they were considered country music. And there was one day, I think the most what really sets bluegrass apart from any other style of music, old timey, folk, country, is the 3-finger roll. So like one day, Earl was sitting on the front porch, and he saw his brother walking up, and he was just sitting there playing around with the banjo, and he started doing this 3-finger roll on the banjo. Now some people, they say Don Reno came up with that 3-finger roll, and then Don Reno was shipped to World War II, and then he wasn't able to make it back. But we can all agree that Earl Scruggs is a great banjo player, and he can't be replicated, and either can Don Reno. Don Reno is an incredible banjo player himself. But to me, when people ask me, what is bluegrass? Like, what is it set? Like, what makes it bluegrass? To me, it's that 3-finger roll. Not if there's drums in it or not. I still think it's bluegrass if there's drums. In fact, the early bluegrass bands, some of them had drums. So some of the purists out there that don't like drums, you're wrong about that. So that the Bluegrass Boys, they just started calling it bluegrass after that. After about 5 or 6 years, because this was 1946 when Bill Monroe started the Bluegrass Boys. So I'd say in the early 50s, people started calling it bluegrass music. It wasn't like he called it like he invented it or anything. It just kind of happened, where people started calling bluegrass. Yeah, and now it's it's really become. It's kind of, some of it isn't the 3-finger roll now. It's a kind of, every kind of genre does evolve, So, and that's the kind, I'm into that. I'm into just kind of stretching it out as far as it can go. I like to play traditional tunes. I like to write traditional style songs once in a while, but for the most part, I like to tell stories. With my songs. Now, what I do for a day job is I play music too. I play on Pearl Street in Boulder, which is a great place to busk. And, I learn a lot about people there. Busking is like a great people watching experience, and you can kind of learn a lot about just the world busking. And I busk outside this bookstore, which is a really popular bookstore in Pearl. It's been open for 50 years. I bought this book there called Left Hand, which is it's the name of the chief that was the Arapaho chief there, and in Arapaho his name is Niwot, And between Boulder and where I live is Niwot, the town of Niwot. And funny, a lot of people don't realize that it's named after Left Hand, and Left Hand Brewery is named after Chief Left Hand.
Whoa.
And he was a prominent Arapaho Cheyenne chief there, and he spoke many languages, and he was very peaceful because the Arapaho were like a trading, and the Cheyenne, they were like a trading, they were traders, so they kept it peaceful, unlike the Utes and some of the other local Native American groups. But so I wrote this song because Chief Left Hand, he was trying to make peace with Governor John Chivington and John Evans, the governor of Colorado, and they pretty much steered them into the Sand Creek Massacre, and that's where like tons of women and children and old folks were slaughtered by Colorado's national reserve, basically, and it started the longest American war, the Plains Indian War. And it's a pretty sad story. I want you guys to check it out. Check out Chief Left Hand. There's a couple Chief Left Hand. There's two Chief Left Hands, and the one I'm talking about is he's never been photographed before, and because they didn't let him meet with Governor John Evans because they knew that he would try to be peaceful. They tried to get some of the dog soldiers leaders in there. So anyway, he wasn't killed at Sand Creek, but he was wounded, and he passed away not long after that. But then there was another Chief Left Hand that was part of the Plains Indian War, and he was an Arapaho chief. And if you see a picture of Chief Left Hand, that's the chief that you see. But this is the chief I'm singing about, the one that was at Sand Creek. So yeah, let me just drop it into D here before I get there. Oh, John, what have you done? You're the savage, not the native son. What you did down at Sand Creek with the devil's cavalry, I don't know where we'll go. Follow the buffalo and all the things in between, just a nightmare inside of a dream. Well, we lived on the Front Range, next to Denver on the plains, and the town, they were scared by the savages living over there. Oh, Governor, will we go? We are starving and we are cold. Have you found a place that's safe from your soldiers and their ways? Well, Left Hand, what can I say? Found the perfect place the other day, bringing children old and weak savage, not the native son. What you did down in Sand Creek with the devil's cavalry, I don't know where we'll go. Used to follow the buffalo and all the things in between. Just a nightmare inside of a dream. And all the things in between. Just a nightmare inside of a dream.
You know, it's really, it can be really tough to look at the history and the dynamics of those relationships between the early American settlers and the native indigenous people here.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's the most popular thing to write about. You know, sometimes you bring it up and people are like, huh. I'll be on Boulder on Pearl Street and someone will have a shirt that says Niwot High School. I'm like, you know what Niwot means in Arapaho? Left hand. That's what Left Hand Brewery is named after. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, there was a great chief that lived here before anybody lived here, you know. And, you know, there's a lot of Native American history, obviously, in Colorado because, you know, the Route 25, you know, which goes straight to Mexico City has been used. I mean, arguably, you know, they just found bones in Arizona that's, they say, maybe even 26,000 years old with the arrowheads. So, you know, how long have they been using that trading route? You know, and of course, when you look at all the interstates and everything, it's all the old Native American routes. So, to me, it's just, you know, it's part of our history. And when you go to a town and it says this French trapper was the first settler here, I think we should revisit that kind of conversation too. You know, because we weren't the first people here. You know, there's been people here for a long time, and we should, you know, definitely remember those people. You know.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So a great way to do it is write a song about it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And there's some vivid imagery in that song.
Yeah, I didn't want to be too. I try to be pretty, you know, abstract when I write. I try to let people kind of make up their, you know, make up their own meaning to it. But this one is a little bit more, a little bit more precise about what it's meaning. But yeah. And I read a lot about Native American history, not just those Native Americans there, but wherever I'm at. I feel like when I lived in Georgia, I learned a lot about the Cherokee, and there's just so much there. You know, when people say Native Americans, it's not just one thing. It's many layers to it. There's many different cultures and beliefs and the ways people did things, you know. So, and that's what's fascinating. It's not just something that you can read about in 5 minutes and be like, oh, okay, that's what that was. No, it's pretty deep, you know. There's a lot to learn there, you know. There's a lot to learn from that culture.
It's got to give you a stronger sense of connection to the land that you're in, or, you know, the places that you're at a certain time as well. Having that deep, rich history and knowledge of, you know, the people that occupied, you know, the lands for centuries.
Right.
Now, when you're sitting down and writing a song, is there a particular way that you go about it in terms of, well, now I know you mentioned that you're not a typical, like, bluegrass, you know, stick to the form type thing. But I guess, is there something that usually hits you first, like the inspiration for the song, like the subject matter, a guitar riff, a lyric? Is it something that changes song to song, day to day?
It's usually like not even with a guitar or a pen. You know, I'll be like taking a shower or something. Whatever, like there's sometimes where, you know, Willie Nelson said, sometimes I just get in the car and drive around. That's how I write a song, because that part of his brain shuts down. He's not thinking about certain things. So it's like his creativity side just way opens up. And I feel like if I was like mowing the grass or just doing something where I'm like, you know, that's the kind of thing where I start hearing like a melody in my head. And I'll kick it around for like a week. And then I'll go and I've got like a greenhouse where I live in the backyard, and I go and sit in there. It's kind of my creative space, because I'm just awake because I like to be totally alone when I'm writing a song, because I've got concentration issues, so I go in there and either write something. It's funny, like I'll write it in about 15 minutes, or I will write a really bad song for like 2 weeks, and then I'll bring it to the band, and they'll be like, "No," So it's usually the ones that happen the easiest for me that turn out to be tunes that I actually play. Because I got, for every like 5 songs that I write, one of them is something that I'll play in public. And as far as like songwriting goes, I've been playing music since I was about 7 years old. I'm 46, and really didn't have the self-confidence to call myself a songwriter or be a songwriter or think I could be a songwriter until maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, to be honest with you. And I used to write poetry as a kid, and I've even won some contests in high school for poetry, but I just never really, believed in myself or thought that I could be a songwriter. And then once you do that, you write several songs. It's like the Impostor Syndrome, that a lot of people have. And I try to tell people, write a song. You're a great musician. Write a tune. Like do that. You can do it. Anybody can do it. And when the first probably 50 tunes I wrote were not songs that I could play. It's a process. You're kind of chiseling them out of you, and they're in there. And there's tons of songs that aren't songs that I can write in 15 minutes that I know I can still do something with. I'm just procrastinating or just putting it off or whatever. So it's hard to be a musician and the business side of it and playing gigs and working a day job and then having the time and space in your head to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I've taken tons of songwriter classes and clinics, and there are things that I learned, but I would say I think the music's in you, and yeah, and it's a self-confidence thing with me, and I'd just say, be confident in your ability, to anybody that's a songwriter, that's a budding songwriter, just do the thing, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's a great dynamic to work with a band, another group of musicians, kind of. It's like a sounding board, with in all actuality, like for your own music.
Totally, and sometimes I'll go in there, like, I wrote this song, All That's Left, which is kind of like a tune that I wrote about cancel culture. And, I brought it to band rehearsal, and the band added a little chorus, not an actual, like, verse chorus, but a instrumental chorus to it. And then we got to meet Benny Burrell Galloway, who writes a lot of songs for Green Sky and Infamous String Dusters, and then he added a line to this, so it's like sometimes these songs do a lot of times they evolve, you know what I mean? There it's not, there's little parts to it that kind of grow, and I always, even if I try to finish the tune with words, and then I'll change the words after time, sometimes. So it's an evolving process, even the song itself, I'm that way with other songs. Like when I cover tunes, sometimes I'll put words in there that aren't the words to the songs, and I'll just go with it, for years and years, and someone will be like, "You're singing the wrong part." I'm like, you know what? A lot of people do that, like I know Jerry Garcia, I'm a huge Deadhead, and Jerry, he changed a lot of words to a lot of traditional tunes. So like when I'm singing a song like Dark Hollow, the chorus to it, people are like, "Oh, that's not," well, that's how I learned it, and I'm just not going to change the words at this point, And I think that's how songs evolve, like for example, like Mississippi John Hurt, he wrote a song called Lewis Collins in the 20s, and that was just an old song that was from the 1800s that he put new words to, you know what I'm saying? So like that's kind of how a lot of those songs got written back in the day. There was a song that was a lot like it before, the original songwriter, like in the 20s or teens, is just putting, a different set of words to the melody, that's come up there.
Yeah, it'd be like, like the St. James Infirmary Blues was Gambler's Blues, and, had a couple different people, recording it. And
Totally.
putting their versions out there, and
Yeah. Or
like a Lead Belly or Satchmo, you know.
Totally. Yeah, like Shady Grove. I think Shady Grove has like a million different verses to it. You know, and originally it only had like 3 or 4 verses. You know, so or like there's a bunch of Stephen Foster tunes that have been, you know, the words have been changed to them. You know, so, you know, it's just music just evolves. You know, and so does songwriting. And like I said, you know, I'm trying to find my place as a songwriter too. You know, I've had, you know, some days I feel really confident about it. Some days I have the imposter syndrome too, you know, so, and I bet you, you know, everybody has those feelings, even Bob Dylan and John Prine, and everybody has those self-doubt moments, you know what I mean? But you can't let that keep you from creating, you know, because I think that you got to write a song to be like creative, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I like to do covers, but I like to play my own songs, you know, too.
Do you find, I mean, sometimes they say if it's like a problem, then you can identify it and then maybe fix it or something like that. But, you know, that imposter syndrome, do you find that it comes from somewhere in,
Yes.
like specifically?
Childhood, yeah.
Like for you personally? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, like I came up around like, you know, the people that inspired me, Louisa Branscombe in Georgia. She wrote a bunch of songs for Alison Krauss, Steel Rails, and some really big tunes. So that's intimidating, you know, when you're friends with people that are writing songs for like the biggest people in your genre. So you're like, I could never do that. You know, I'm not smart enough. I don't have a economy of words to fill in the, because I mean it is good to know a lot of words, you know, so you're not redundant, you know, when you're writing a tune, or you're not just describing exactly what you're doing, or you know, like you're trying to be a little abstract, and when you're doing that you have to have different words in your head. And you know, like when Bob Dylan accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, he explained, you know, it's because I read Moby Dick and all the classics, you know, I had some of these songs, you know, because if you listen to Highway 61, you know that he read Moby Dick, you know, because or in some of these other you know, so you know, and like Robert Hunter from the Dead, you know, the guy that wrote a lot of songs, you know, he was he read all the books, you know, and so did Jerry. Jerry was like a big Frankenstein fan, and you know, so I think it is important as a writer, as a songwriter, to read, you know, and I read all the time. I'm a big Steinbeck fan. I get inspired by him. I steal sometimes, you know, I'll read a line in a book and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to take those 2 words. And that's another thing about songwriting too. It is good to have a starting point. So you have that melody, or maybe you have a kick to a tune, and okay, you got a starting point. Let's find the end of this song and do the thing, you know, finish it. And that's one thing that Louisa, you know, kind of drove home to me, was finish the song that you started writing and then write another song. So, and that's important, you know. And of course, there's like 50 songs that I haven't completed, but yeah, so. And it's a good feeling too. It kind of takes that imposter syndrome away. Once you write a good tune, you're on a high for like a week or two, and then you start being like, okay, this song's old now. I need to write a new tune. You know, keep it real. You know.
So sometimes you get that when you're writing a song, you know, dealing with that relationship of your own creativity. Is there a time you experience that in live performance, but in a different way? You know, for example, like that loud, noisy barroom. For me, you know, sometimes that loud, noisy barroom, you know, and you finish a song, and you know, whatever, it's, you know, it's not like a show in a theater or something
Right.
like that. You know, people haven't bought tickets to come see it, and so, you know, your background, you know, the gig, whatever. But like every now and then, that sort of thing can creep in and be like, oh,
Sure.
nobody's really this. I don't really. Maybe I'm really bad today, or something like that. You know.
You know, I've been
Or
doing
is that totally isolated?
I've been doing that for a long time. So like just doing bars and stuff, and you know, so I've gone through all those things. It's to the point where there's some times where you could just say whatever you wanted to say. You could say like the craziest thing ever, and like maybe one person would be like, "What is he talking? Did he just say that?" And like on Pearl Street, you know, like you'll have. I've just noticed that there will be like, you know, the more people are walking on the mall, the less tips you get, because it's just chaotic, and it's sensory overload, so people aren't really paying attention to the me playing music on the corner, you know. But so when that happens and there's all these people out there and I'm just playing, that's sometimes where I might start writing a tune or just playing things a different way. And or at shows I'll experiment a different thing with a song because really nobody's listening anyway at some of these shows, like we can't all be playing listening rooms. And you know how it used to be where you'd go to a show like a concert, and there might be like out of like 500 people, there'd be like 10 people scattered around having a conversation. But it's different now. Like I think that you go to some shows and everybody's talking. You know what I'm saying? And as an artist, unless you're like the lead singer of Wilco, or you can't really go off on them for talking. They came out and saw you to see you.
Yeah.
But part of me wants the other people that are listening to be able to enjoy it. So you see those people, they're sitting there enjoying it. They're really into it, but they can't hear, and they're turning around looking at the people like mad and stuff. So it's kind of, like you're like, this is where we're at with talking at shows, And I've had the worst luck. I've been to like 4 Red Rock shows last year where we're just stuck behind a conversation. And, I'm not going to say anything, but we have a friend that turns around. She's a little bit older, and she gives him an evil look, and looks at him cross-eyed.
Yeah. Yeah, so I saw a post online somewhere. Somebody was talking about the folks that can afford to, just go and talk through a show or whatever.
I know. It's like, that's a luxurious thing, They're probably the same people that want to hire you for their 2-year-old's birthday. They invite all their friends over, and they want to pay you like $100 to play their 3-hour party. Those are the same people.
Yeah.
But anyway. Thank God for all the music fans out there, though, because you've got a lot of people that, you'll go and you'll play in that bar, and then there's that one person that just, they're so excited about live music, and that's why you do it. I mean, it's like busking. You'll be out on the corner for 2 hours. You won't get like $2 or $3 in your thing, and then some guy with earphones on, not even listening to you, will drop 100 spot in there, and you'll be like, "Hey, excuse me, sir, thank you." They just keep walking by, So like busking really teaches you patience. You can't like look at it like, "Oh, I'm making X amount an hour," like in the second hour. At the end of the day, usually it kind of everything works out, and you see everybody walking by in their lives, and there's stories there, you meet people, and that's how I get some of my songs is by, this interaction with other people, like a dive bar. I think there's tons of songs at a dive bar, the people that you'll meet in a dive bar, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
well, it's the beauty about the venue for tonight's show, Chuck, over at Art Start, because it's a really phenomenal listening room.
Cool.
And it's one of the coolest things that we have, kind of to offer in the area in terms of that
Nice.
that relationship between these arts organizations and WXPR and whatnot, and that's really where it was born out of. Like we've got places in the area that support musicians and artists, and that is amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be here if they weren't hiring you to play that dive bar or that noisy bar room,
Totally.
But to have that listening room space, it's really phenomenal, and so super excited for that tonight.
Thanks, man.
Experience that.
Yeah, and those bars, those are a great place to develop, as a performer before you get to the listening room. You know what I'm saying? In Georgia, we have, for listening rooms, we have Eddie's Attic. You've ever heard of Eddie's Attic before?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a great place, And I remember first going there, they would come up to the table and be like, "Can you just keep it down?" And when I was like younger, I was like, "Excuse me?" And now I'm like, "Oh, that's great that there is a place that, that person who does love to listen to music is kind of in a safe space. They're not getting talked all over. It's awkward for the staff to come up to the table and be like, "Hey, can you keep the conversation down?" But what happens is, and I think you're a performer, right? So like you'll be there with your PA in a bar and you start turning it up. It's funny because you're like, "Oh, the conversation goes up. Okay, so forget it, I'm not going to compete with this sound." And then the bartender's like, "Turn it down,
Yeah.
But, they want that ambiance, that thing in the corner. It brings people, So, yeah, I think there's and also open mics, like I don't do open mics, but I think it's a great development tool. Like I remember the first open mic I played, I ran off the stage. And like the whole week later, this is of course when I was like 18, and I came back the next week. I thought about it every day, and I was like, I'm gonna go back. I'm going to go back. And there's only like 3 or 4 people there at this open mic, so it's like funny, I used to be really nervous about performing in front of people. Sometimes I still am. I get more nervous like playing for like friends of the family now than I do at an event, but
so much more exposed in that intimate setting.
Yeah, like someone might invite you to their Thanksgiving or something like that, and the whole family's there, and maybe they're not music folks, and they're like, "Who's this guy? Oh, you're a musician, okay." But thank God for those listening rooms,
Yeah. Well, we've got a host of our bluegrass show, Randy Burrell, who's out there and watching the stream out there in Facebook world. And,
cool.
He says, he's loving the tunes.
Okay.
And appreciating our conversation as well. But
Cool.
you got another. You got another one in there.
Sure do. Yeah, I'm a Georgia boy, so I love my Widespread Panic.
Yeah, man.
Colonel Bruce said, there's 100 better bands out there, but I'd rather see Widespread Panic.
Well, Schools on the Bass just throws it down. Yeah.
And actually, this is a school song right here. Sorry about that. Live radio. Sorry, we were in drop D there, so that would have sounded weird if I'd started. Picking up those pieces. Picking up those pieces. But not today. Writing you a letter. Writing you a letter. But not today. Wanted to touch my maker. Wanted to touch my maker. But not today. Sweating now out my worry. Sweating now out my worry. But not today. Picking up those pieces. Thanks, man.
A little panic in the house.
Yeah, I've seen so many great bands, and like some of the best shows I've seen were Panic shows. I saw them in '95 at Chastain Park in Atlanta, and actually one of my favorite people in the world, Colonel Bruce, got up with them. And then the next day, David Blackman, who was a really great fiddle player that played with Jerry Reed and a lot of other people, he played with them. And on that song, on the album, my buddy Matt Mundy, who's like one of the best mandolin players ever born, he was the mandolin player on it. And that's the guy that plays at the barn, you know. So, you know, that scene in Georgia's got, you know, it's like a big almond. You know, there's so many great bands from Georgia. You know, REM, the B-52s, Widespread Panic, Colonel Bruce Hampton, the Aquarium Rescue Unit, which is, you know, if you see the Dead and Company, their bass players with them, and now Jimmy Herring from Aquarium Rescue Unit is on in Widespread Panic. You know, so it's all, you know. They're all, you know, they borrow from each other, and that bluegrass scene that's got some great musicians, and sometimes they have some of those guys on the album, you know. And Matt Mundy's like my favorite mandolin player. That's why I love that song so much. But it's just like it's just a cool, chill tune, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
We talk a little bit about gear sometimes, and like the dynamics of the bluegrass world kind of sometimes dictate you must play like a Martin guitar.
Oh yeah. Well, now it's different. It's like now it's like Martin's like the only thing that is accessible because, you know, like this D18 right here, it's a mahogany. It's not a rosewood, and it's pretty much the only guitar I could afford at this point. I mean, if I was to get like one of these, like you've got Thompson guitars, Collings. I mean, it just keeps Wayne Henderson. I mean, there's so many guitars, and people. It's funny because people are starting to look down their nose at new Martins, unless it's like a pre-war D28 or D18, because they're just not as cool as a Thompson or a Collins guitar.
Sure.
But I'll say this: like my D18, especially like after 28, they've done something different with the bracing system. It made it a little bit louder. It took a little bit of weight off the D18. And it's a Canon, and I think it's a discount Canon. I mean, you know, some of my binding has popped off, you know, recently because of Colorado, but I can't really, you know. Usually I have the cheapest guitar, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And then sometimes definitely when I busk, I use a Blue Ridge guitar, and people come up to me and ask me all the time, you know, what kind of guitar is that? You know, where was it made? China? How much did it cost? A couple $100, you know? Because I'm busking. I'm not going to go out there with the D18 just because I don't want the setup to get messed up. I don't care what it looks like, you know. I dropped it back there, dropped the guitar on, you know, you know, yeah. So, you know, I'm not the best at taking care of my things. And as far as gear goes, like, I try to keep it as simple as possible. I don't have like a big pedal board or anything like that. I'm not like Billy Strings. I don't have a huge pedal board. I usually, if I could, I would just play it into a SM57, but I do play into a DI. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really, not really, I would like to get one of them. Have you ever heard of Tone Dexter before? I'd like to get one of them. It finds the tone of your guitar. It's it takes a few minutes and it actually learns how your guitar sounds. It's a new thing, but you can't find it because the microchip shortage.
Oh,
but
no.
It's this new DI that kind of it's Molly Tuttle's using it and Billy's using it. That's something I'm interested in because I want it to sound natural. Yeah. And when I came up, it was SM58 or SM57 on the sound hole. And it sounded great, you know. Tony Rice, I don't think you would ever see Tony Rice playing into a DI or Norman Blake or anybody like that, you know. So this DI thing is just a new thing, you know, and it's easier, you know. And you are sending a mixed signal to the, you know, you're not always going to get a great sound guy. So you have a little bit more control of the signal you're sending to the board with the DI. In Lyons, Colorado, we have Grace DIs. You ever heard of those? Grace Designs? They're the hot new thing. The Grace Designs, the Felix. Okay. It's a DI. You know.
Check those out.
But I use that LR Bags DI that a lot of people use, you know, so.
Well, and I think, you know, going back to that Glenn Campbell thing with Ovation guitars, wasn't that one of the first under-saddle pickups that he had?
Sure.
They kind of crafted or you know, whatever, developed for him because he was sick of, he moves around a lot when he plays. And he couldn't stick in front of that microphone.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite guitar players, probably my favorite guitar player, Tony Rice. he played it. He was really fond of an Ovation, and I think he recorded an album with one. And a lot of traditional bluegrass musicians, they don't know that, because he plays a very famous D28, But yeah, I mean, I've got other guitars. I have another guitar that my buddy Scott Morgan, I was in a band called the Barn Rats for about 10 years, and that was a more traditional bluegrass band, and he built me like a Brazilian D28 kind of copy, and he was one of my best friends, and he passed away, so that's a very special guitar, And then when I was 12 years old, I bought for $50, I bought a Guild G37 because I was a big Slash fan, and Slash played a Guild guitar, So my first roots in music were like hard rock and metal and stuff like that,
Nice.
And then, I was 14 or 15 years old, and my cousin from New England moved down, and he brought me a Bob Dylan tape, the Grateful Dead's Greatest Hits, and Beatles' Capitol Years. And he gave me those 3 tapes. And that changed my life. I really liked that. I like that vibe, I still like hard rock and metal, especially if I'm at a hockey game or something, But for the most part, I'm a huge folk music and Americana and bluegrass guy now. But, yeah. I think your ear kind of changes through the years too. Like I used to love the rosewood sound, and now I'm a big mahogany guy. I like the way that sounds, and I've heard that the older you get, a lot of players go to mahogany. They're not into rosewood. Yeah.
Something about the tones.
Yeah, your hearing changes. And you can hear it better. Maybe that's not true. But
I've lost all these high decibels.
Yeah.
For sure.
I know my vision's going. I used to have like awesome vision. Now I'm like holding stuff like 30 feet away to read it.
It's not a carrot thing.
Right.
Well, we're just a few minutes shy of 3 p.m. And I certainly don't have to cut you off right at 3. I'm here till 4, and I'm happy to have you sit with me in the studio as long as you care to.
Yeah, buddy. You know it, man. I'm having a blast. I appreciate you guys having us, and I love this town, and I love community radio. Like whenever we're playing on the KGNU in Boulder, big shout out to Boulder and their radio station. We play in Atlanta, WRFG in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And community radio is really where it's at because they're playing all the deep cuts, and we're just, it's just great that you exist.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been 30 plus years here at WXPR in the Northwoods, and it's really amazing the opportunities that we have as a community station here. And yeah, well, as it is special to have you with us this afternoon. Live music on the air is one of my favorite things to be part of, and so really appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, and this is a tune. It's called Shady Grove, and it's a traditional song. It's a Virginia kind of tune from like the Carter family kind of vein.
Shady Grove.
Oh, Shady Grove, my little love, Shady Grove, my darling, Shady Grove, my little love, I'm bound for Harlan. Wish I had a banjo string made of golden twine. I'd tie that pretty girl to my side, down the road I'd ride. Oh, Shady Grove, my little love, Shady Grove, my darling, Shady Grove, my little love, I'm bound for Harlan. Peaches in the summertime and apples in the fall. I can't have the girl that I love, I don't want none at all. Shady Grove, my little love, Shady Grove, my darling, Shady Grove, my little love, I'm bound for Harlan. Every day when I get home, my wife, if I don't please her, the more I do, the more she complains. Damned if I don't leave her. Oh, Shady Grove, my little love. Shady Grove, my darling. Shady Grove, my little love. I'm bound for Harlan.
Nice.
Thanks. I've heard that done many different ways.
And speaking of Jerry Garcia, I love the Shady Grove version that he had.
Yeah, that's kind of what I stole it from, because the one that's real popular up in Virginia is like the D major version of it, and it's very Carter family sounding. And I played with a lot of pickers from Virginia at the barn. A lot of them will come down there, and they just have a different style. And that's what I've noticed about bluegrass music throughout the country. I travel a lot, and I just see that it's different everywhere. Like in Colorado, it's very inspired by they call it Sam grass. It's very Sam Bush,
yeah.
pushed, because Telluride and Sam Bush was such a big thing at Telluride. He really inspired all those people, And then you have something different up in the Northwest. New England's got Berkeley and that scene. DC's got a really big scene. Ohio, Pennsylvania. And it's all sounds just a little different. They all have their own style of bluegrass, and that's just the evolution of bluegrass. People take it and they change it, and it just naturally morphs, whether people like it or not, There is an essence to it. I remember Tony Rice, when he was inducted into the Bluegrass Hall of Fame like about 5 years ago, he said, this music evolves, but there is like something that we need to preserve, at the core of bluegrass. And I definitely believe that, There's something, the purists have, they definitely have a, it's like you got to meet in the middle, you got to keep a little bit of that 3-finger roll in bluegrass. Yeah. I think, there's different kinds of rolls, but the 3-finger roll to me is what makes it distinctly bluegrass. Of course, like we as a band, High Lonesome, we don't just play that. We play picking up the pieces. We play old Doc Watson tunes. We play, so we're not really a traditional bluegrass band, I would say. I just have traditional and hippie roots, hippie grass roots, Because some people are like, oh, I've got a more traditional background, and you're like, dude, I've come from North Georgia, man. I was going to Everett Barn for 20 years, It's not just, you can have that traditional background and still play, be a little bit more open-minded, to music,
Yeah. Well, hey, I got to let you know that you're listening to 91.7 FM WXPR Rhinelander, also heard at 100.9 FM Ironwood Hurley, and streaming online at WXPR.org. Of course, live streaming today on the Midwest Music Hour on Facebook and YouTube. But you can listen to WXPR wherever you go. Download the WXPR app in your app store, or ask your smart speaker to play WXPR. And program support today comes from the Northwoods Land Trust, committed to protecting land and water to benefit future generations. More information on getting involved to preserve the health and beauty of the Northwoods can be found at northwoodslandtrust.org. And Chuck Satiro here in Studio A, hanging out with me this afternoon, playing some tunes, getting ready for the show tonight. 7 p.m. Art Start Rhinelander. It's going to be a wonderful night filled with more wonderful music from Chuck. And, you'll be doing some of your original tunes. You'll be doing some stuff with the band. I imagine, obviously, you get a little more freedom to kind of do whatever you want to do in a solo show, Or you kind of do whatever you want as a band anyway.
I really have more experience, throughout all my career playing with bands. So, the last year I've been going out and playing solo shows. And there was a little bit of imposter syndrome there. When I first started doing it, I was like, oh, this is a learning experience. 3 hours is a lot of time to fill with your own music. And I'd say 90% of the tunes that I play with the band, I probably couldn't play by myself, just because there's no banjo, or I need that mandolin, on a tune sometimes. But it's, busking, going out there and busking for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That gives you a lot of space, to learn a whole bunch of new tunes, and that's what I've done. Like the last year, I've learned a lot more like solo driven, covers, and I'm even starting to write some, tunes that aren't for the band, So I've got this thing where I'm now a solo artist and I'm in a band, which helps, to pay the bills, because you got to diversify your portfolio, like Wu-Tang Clan
Yeah,
said.
big
You know
time.
what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm excited about tonight, and I love Wisconsin. I love the Midwest. Everyone's just so nice, and that's one thing that we kind of encountered in Colorado when we moved there, because it's a very Midwest vibe there. Everyone's like, where I'm from, people aren't like, oh, so like, you go to like a McDonald's or something like that, and the person's like, so what are you doing the rest of the day? And you're like, I haven't thought about that, but it's nice to be asked that, And when we first moved to Colorado, we thought that was like one, it wasn't. It was just an isolated incident, but it seems people are really nice there. It's the same kind of vibe out here. Um, and yeah, so we love Wisconsin. Of course, my wife's from Ashland, Wisconsin.
Sure.
And we're headed up there, and that's why we put this tour together, because, well, gas is so expensive, so drive from Longmont. We needed a 7-show tour to pay for this trip. So we're going to... Yeah, and my wife Lily, who's my manager, she's my photographer, she's my everything. Her, and I couldn't do this without her, She hasn't seen her family in 2.5 years, so we're really stoked to see them because of the the pandemic and just being safe, and so that's exciting. But on Thursday I'll be playing in Duluth, and Saturday I'll be playing down there in Trempealeau at the Trempealeau Hotel, and then on Sunday I think I'm playing in Wausau. I haven't really known the dates of anything, just because I want to just be surprised every day. You know what I mean? Because if I think about it too much, I'll probably be a little anxious about it. So, yeah,
the beauty of the open road, and
having somebody who's has your schedule, and is taking care of you. So, yeah, I mean, it's I'm blessed to have supportive friends and my awesome wife and an awesome band. Got a really kind vibe in this band. I love the guys, and that's really important to me, that everybody gets along and we're having fun, and you're just taking it easy and not taking things too seriously, because mistakes happen, you forget words, and like the Dead. Like, how many times have you listened to a Dead show and Jerry's forgotten a line, or Bobby forgets a lot of lines, and I would rather that. No set list. I don't do a lot of set lists. Like, for me, it's hard for me to... Well, if I do a set list, it's really just a song list to go from. You know what I mean? But you'll play with some musicians who are rigid. Oh, I thought we were going to play Down the Road right now in the key of B. What happened? You're like, it's not that big of a deal, You can...
Yeah.
Do you like to use rigid set lists?
No.
No. Yeah.
No, it's just... okay, so if I got, like, a set that's 45 minutes, or a set that's an hour, and specific shows, sometimes it's necessary, because I'm not gonna, you gotta prepare the band a little bit. The guys that I play with, we're not full time. I do a lot of solo work. Maybe bring a guy in for a small arrangement or whatever, duo, trio, something like that. And so, sometimes having a little bit of frame of reference to go by is super helpful.
Yeah, well, with 5-piece bluegrass band, definitely you have to know the kicks, the endings, the who's taking the solo when. So yeah, that's one thing about it's kind of like I could play with a dobro player. It's so easy, but once you start adding those extra pieces, people are like, I don't really, and you could hit a brick wall. You know what I mean? And you don't want to do that. But I always say, like, when I'm playing a loud bar or something like that, I get one do-over on a song, But yeah, it's definitely, the more pieces you add to the lineup, and once you get to, it's funny because it makes the show, in one sense, it's really hard. Like, you have 6 pieces, so you've got a lot of space being filled by lead guitar, lead dobro, mandolin stuff, but it's more complicated, so it's, like, easier for me, and it's harder for me to prepare it. And then at the show, I'm like, if you have 6-piece band it's like that show goes by really fast. You're not playing nearly as many songs, and it's fun because everyone. And also, like, if you have like just 2 people playing improv, it wears on them. Throughout a whole show. That's a lot of work. So I like to spread it out a little bit, and ideally, I like to have a 6-piece band. Yeah, so But I like doing both. I like doing solo and playing with the band.
Nice.
I didn't think I would like doing a solo thing, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly can be. I mean, I started off kind of playing solo and then gathered, musicians around a little bit there. And that can feel like really, I don't know, it could sometimes feel really, like naked in a way when you're doing solo.
Yeah.
Just coming off a band gig or something like that. Or
Yeah. And I usually play with much better musicians. Like, I don't know any music theory at all. I've never taken a guitar lesson or anything like that. So, like, if you were to say, like, the Circle of Fifths or anything like that, I really don't know. But that kind of developed my ear because I had to listen to the radio and just come off, find the chord with my ear, and that's intimidating when you got a fiddle player that, went to Berkeley or whatever, and they know all the things, and they're talking about all the things during rehearsal, and you're like, yeah, cool, let's kick it off in B. All right, sure, yeah, fast,
Yeah.
And there's a little imposter syndrome there too, sometimes when you're, like, what other... if you're playing sports, I don't know baseball, you're playing with other baseball players, that would be weird. But in music, some people are just self-trained, and that's what I was. I didn't really have lessons when I was a kid, or even have the means to take lessons. I had to buy my own guitar and pretty much learn from Guitar Player magazine,
Yeah.
and from Tab and
Tabs
stuff like
online.
that. Yeah, so I kind of cheated, But listening to the radio, and I'd say listening to Bluegrass XM station, that really developed my ear, just playing along with the radio. And, you pick up a lot of things from great musicians. You kind of go to school with them. They teach you. You know?
It's exactly a similar thing to the songwriting process. Like,
Totally.
musically, if you just listen to a lot, you
Yeah.
can be that sponge, soak it up, and
Yeah, I
take it
find
back
that a
out
lot
your
with
own
like
way.
Dylan and Towns. Like my favorite writers are Townes Van Zandt, Dylan, Robert Hunter, and yeah, they definitely. I've learned a lot from those people, But I'd say the person I learned the most from was that guy I told you that built that guitar for me, that was in the band with me for a long time. He was a big mentor. His name was Scott Morgan. He was just a great guitar player. He didn't write any songs, but he was, I picked, if you listen to me, you hear Scott Morgan,
Right on.
So.
Well, you got another song you'd like to share with us?
Sure. This is an old Merle Travis tune.
Cool.
And I'm such a huge fan of Doc Watson's. I saw him so much as a kid. And he used to play this and it's a John Henry tune. John Henry was a steel driving man.
John Henry.
So I think Doc, this was like one of his signature tunes that he would play. Of course, Doc was not a songwriter. I don't think he wrote a single song. But he was an icon. He played all his tunes. And it's funny when you see like picture. He was a huge fan of Bob Dylan's. Doc Watson, and they played folk festivals together. But yeah. Okay. So. Well, I was born one morning, the rain was pouring down, and I heard my mammy talking to my pappy. Let's call him John Henry Brown. Walk on, boy, walk on down that road. There ain't nobody in this whole wide world help you bar that load. Well, I left my mammy and pappy just about the age of 10. Went down to the river and I got a job bringing water to the hard-working men. Walk on, boy, walk on down that road. There ain't nobody in this whole wide world help you bear that load. My old pappy told me, he said, son, just one thing to do. Go out and find you a good loving woman, and she'll be kind to you. Walk on, boy, walk on down that road. There ain't nobody in this whole wide world to help you bear that load. Well, if anyone should ever ask you, just who is that fellow Brown? I'm the cat who left his hammer smoking on the mountain. I beat that steam shovel down. Walk on, boy, walk on down that road. There ain't nobody in this whole wide world to help you bear that load. Well, there ain't nobody in this whole wide world to help you bear that load.
Chuck Sotero with John Henry.
Thank you.
Right here, live on the Midwest Music Hour. It's a very special session of the Crossroads Cafe today, live from Studio A. And you know, we're going to have a great night tonight over at Art Start.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited for you to be here. Our buddy
Thanks,
Dale
brother.
Lang out there, got to say thanks to Dale for reaching out and getting in touch and helping making all this happen.
Yeah, buddy.
He's been waiting out there, I think, peeking through the glass here and saying, as he's listening there.
What's up, Dale? How's it going, brother?
But Dale's pretty awesome, and we're
I like his tie-dye.
yeah, he's always very stylish, but
Yeah.
he's got a style all his own.
Love it.
But yeah, so thanks so much for being here. And,
You're welcome. Yeah.
And you know, we
It's
can.
been a pleasure.
I would have you in all afternoon, but I'm sure that you want to do a little prep and relaxing and
Go get something to eat.
get something to eat
Yep.
before the show and stuff. And there's plenty of great places within spitting distance. Whatever your tastes might be.
Sounds good, buddy. Well, thanks for having me on here. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I'll see you tonight, Scott.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome, brother.
Thanks so much. That's Chuck Sotero, and 7 p.m. at Art Start downtown Rhinelander tonight. You can catch him live in person, and we hope to see you there. And if not, Hi Lonesome is the name of the band, and they're on the internet.
Yep. We're on the Facebooks and all the things.
All the things out there.